In the old world, the Negra would be called an African. In the new world, the Negra would be called an Indian. In the old world, the black man would be called an African. In the new world, the black man would be called a Negro. England would take the Portuguese and Spanish word negra and change it into Negro. Therefore, when the archetype left the old world as an African, when he arrived in the new world, he would become a Negro. This is the mindset. This is the understanding of those who classify themselves to be European. We must remember it is the Aborigine, the indigenous being, the Indian, who is first chained, shackled, and kidnapped, taken from his land and placed on a new land to be chatteled. However, the Aborigine, the indigenous being, the African boarded the European colonial ship as an involuntary servant, the exchange for commercial goods. As he was in the old world, so too would the Indian become in the new world. As he succumbed to Spain, you are Indians. You owe allegiance to a new king and a new kingdom from another world and to a God from another sky. Shame and full of guilt you should be, for you are naked. To be naked is a sin in the eyes of God. All who worship the sun, the moon, the earth, and the rain that wets it shall be burnt alive. The African, however, arrived in the new world much like he had left the old world. That is, he maintained his personal freedom, meaning his tribal association, his belief, his tongue. Before 1625, it is estimated that the colonial population was around 2,000. However, between 1625 and 1775, the colonial population exploded to roughly 2.4 million, and the New World became known as the United Colonies. It is during this period that the European changes psychologically. This is our land, therefore we are superior. The Aborigine, the indigenous being, the Indian, is not affected by this psychological change, for he is already enslaved. But it is the Aborigine, the indigenous being, the African, now Negro, to whom would be affected. According to the mindset of those who now classify themselves to be superior, you, the Negro, are hedonistic and unequipped for freedom. You are a childlike people, and left to yourselves would closely resemble a reversion to barbarism. Gradually, he would move out from the realm of involuntary servitude, where he maintained his personal freedoms, and into the realm of chatteled, where he would become strictly property as the Indian. The Negro begins to protest. The Negro begins to register his protest by performing shoddy work, destroying work tools, and slowing down his production. He would fake illnesses as well as run away. This behavior was soon infectious, as pockets of the now enslaved Negro soon followed. To the European, this behavior was uncharacteristic, uncommon. The European began to attribute this change in behavior as being contemptuous of whites. To slow down his production, to destroy tools was troublesome. To run away, to fake illnesses was to set bad examples. Therefore, those to whom exhibited such behavior became known as nigger, the opposite of Negro, whose behavior is respectful of whites, self-respecting, and not misleading. Now, let us put this in perspective. What we are talking about is behavior. In the modern world, colonial corporate America, doing what one has been asked or ordered to do means one is in compliance. Refusing to submit to an authority figure or standing up to someone who is in charge means one is insubordinate. According to colonial corporate America, an insubordinate employee cannot be tolerated. Such behavior is bad, can be infectious, and troublesome to the company. For the boss, the supervisor is said to have absolute authority. The nigger was the involuntary servant who had become insubordinate, meaning she refused to submit. He stood up. He and or she stood against having their personal freedoms taken. The involuntary servant who was now in compliance was the enslaved Negro, meaning he surrendered to the European concept as being superior, as having absolute authority. It was the nigger that gave birth to Mabuta Isabella Baumfree, who would go on to change her name to Sojourner Truth. The nigger is the one who guided, who instructed the O'Day Araminta Ross, who would go on to change her name to Harriet Tubman. Peace.